Hi there, my name is Jules, and I would like to thank you for coming to my little talk today on gender, sex, and sexuality, and my experiences of going through life as myself. Before we get to the meat and potatoes of the conversation, let me give you a little brief history of me. I was born in 1977 in Sumter, South Carolina. When I was about 4, we moved to Illinois, where my family is originally from, to help take care of family members after my aunt passed away. I grew up just south of Chicago in a little town called Aroma Park. Went to school in Kankakee, Illinois. Started college in Western Illinois University for 1 semester, and then I came home and went to Olivet Nazarene University for 2 years before I transferred back to Western. In the in-between time, I did live downtown Chicago with my late husband, who passed away when we were 21 years old. He was one of the reasons that I moved back to Western Illinois to continue on with school. I studied interdisciplinary studies in psychology and sociology with a minor in voice, and I also studied religion. I am currently located in Reno, Nevada, where I live with my wonderful husband of 5 years, and we are exploring life in the wonderful high desert mountains. So let's get to it. I am an intersex trans woman. What does that mean? That means I was assigned male at birth, and I have transitioned into female. But the intersex part makes me different than the typical transgender person. So I was assigned male at birth, but with the advance of technology and everything, when I decided to transition to female, my doctor required me to get genetic testing just to make sure that we treat me correctly. That's when we discovered that I'm actually intersex, which makes everything make a lot more sense. So, if we think back to middle school and high school biology, male is XY, female is XX. But we also had, that little caveat of there are other chromosomal combinations. In fact, there are 6. And most people hear intersex and they think of hermaphrodite, but that's very rare. Very, very rare. I have what is called 47XXY, also known as Klinefelter syndrome. What is typical with a person with Klinefelter's is that we are all male at birth. We have physical characteristics, both internally and or externally, and that includes softer skin, little to no body hair, no Adam's apple or a very small one, wider hips, wider thighs, curvier hips, curvier thighs. Our pelvis tends to be that of shaped like a female. We can also have internal different characteristics. Some are born with ovaries, some are born with testes, and so forth. Me specifically, when I had my phase 1 of gender reassignment surgery, which was inguinal bilateral orchiectomy, or removal of the testes through my inguinal space. So I have a C-section scar from that. That's always fun. The females in the class who are parents know what the C-section shuffle is. Yes, I became very proficient at the C-section shuffle. But anyway, I digress. The surgeon, when he went to remove my testes, found that the sperm cord that is typically connected to the testes actually was shaped like a fallopian phalange. So it had little fingers that were connected to the testes. Also, in my inguinal space, where in a female would be the uterus and cervix and things like that, my space was set up to house those. So if I would have been born with a uterus, that's where it would have been. And my space was large enough to have one. Now, when I started my hormone therapy because of my genetic testing, I only had to take a testosterone blocker because my estrogen levels were that of a typical female of my age. This was when I was in my late 20s. I think I was diagnosed at 29 to be exact. I started my transition according to the WPATH standards after having a year of intensive psychotherapy plus living two years as my intended gender before I actually could medically transition. So I started a testosterone blocker, and that caused immediate changes. My face became rounder, more feminine. My skin got even softer and thinner like a female's. My fat distribution, my internal fat distribution changed, so my hips got even curvier, my butt got even bigger, and so forth. My breasts developed. I went through the same stages as a hormonal schoolgirl, but the breasts are mine. No implants. Voice changed a little. I've always had a higher pitched voice, but it went even more. So in person, you would think I sounded like similar to Kathleen Bates, that kind of deeper female voice. Electronic devices, to give you an idea, a little more science, they actually compress the sound wave, and so the deeper basal sounds are more amplified. So that's why my voice sounds actually deeper on the phone or on an electronic device than it does in real life. But anyway, so I started my transition in Alabama when I was 32. Then when I went to get my surgery, I needed to be on estrogen therapy as part of my hormones therapy. So we ended up adding in estrogen and progesterone. And then as I got older, 15 years into my transition, because I am now 47, I had to start taking a little bit of spironolactone, which is an anti-androgen, which a lot of women on PCOS take, because I started developing PCOS-like symptoms. So my excess estrogen was starting to be converted into testosterone. I definitely was scared transitioning in the deep south. But surprisingly, people mind their own damn business. Yes, you would get looks like when I first started transitioning, when I still looked more male. Now I work places and people are like, wow, didn't know you were trans. Cool. Met my husband in 2000, got married, been together now 5 years. His family accepted me. They were a very conservative Mennonite family. He's not Mennonite. His parents left the Mennonite church, but he still has a sibling that's in the Mennonite community or church, and his family still lives in the Mennonite community. But I come from a very conservative background as well. So I always had those fears, and living in small towns, things like that. It can make it difficult to transition, to get things like your name changed, your driver's license changed, your birth certificate changed. All depends on the state laws, because there are 50 states with 50 different laws. So I was able to get my name changed without a problem. My license, even though it had a female picture on it, said male, which made many a police officer confused when I had to go to the courthouse or something and they checked your ID. My birth certificate name change was easy. My federal information like Social Security and all that shows female. My Nevada driver's license shows female. My insurance shows female. My medical records show female. So that was easier in Nevada than it was in Alabama. I couldn't change my gender marker because I had to get my birth certificate changed, which South Carolina doesn't have specific laws, so it just depends on the judge you get if they'll change your birth certificate or not. But also, it's a struggle with everything in life. So you do what you gotta do in order to live your authentic life and to live your truth. So that's what I did. And some other things to consider. Being transgenders, there's about 1% of the human population. Being a redhead is about 2% of the population, and being intersex is between 2 and 3% of the population. So intersex is very much more prevalent than people think. As much as being a redhead, you have the chances of being intersex. So things to consider. Open your mind, expand yourself, and learn. Don't stay ignorant. And there are very real concerns with being trans or intersex or part of the LGBTQ family. You know, the same fears that, anyone would have, like women, for instance. Gotta check the back seat of the car, gotta check under the car as you're walking to the car, gotta make sure somebody's not following you, gotta make sure you know where the nearest light is, where the nearest place to get help is, where your phone is, who, you would dial for help. Do I have pepper spray? Do I walk by that dark alley worried about being snatched up? Did he put something in my drink because I told him no? There are very real fears with being, especially LGBTQ or trans or intersex. I mean, you have people's ignorance, for one, saying it's not natural, it's a mental illness, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? My biology proves you wrong. So these bathroom bills that say you must use the bathroom for the sex you were assigned at birth. Guess what, buddy? Everybody uses the same bathroom at home. It doesn't matter what gender you are. In the public, we're just going in there to do our thing. I mean, in the women's restroom, we go in our stall, we go to the bathroom, we come out, we wash our hands, we leave. I can't go to the bathroom assigned at birth. One, I'm an intersex woman, and two, I don't have the parts. And a lot of guys' bathrooms don't have stalls. If they do, it's only one or two. And if you do that, they tend to be nasty. Like, uber nasty. I don't know if you've been in some of those men's bathrooms. Just saying. But then you have challenges with moving, Am I going to have to worry about the landlord finding out I'm trans or intersex or, heaven forbid if you were gay or something like that, and they're going to not rent to me, or I'm going to get fired from a job or not be given a job. Some very real things can happen, and each state has different protections and all that. There are no federal protections. They've attempted to pass federal protections, saying that you can't use somebody's gender or sexuality, gender identity, things like that against them. But, that never seems to pass. It comes close. Has come close many times. But, some very real instances, I've been called an it, or a he, she, or she, he, or a she-male. I'm neither of those. I'm a female. My name is Jules. Call me her, or she. Let my husband hear you call me something that is not me. Dare ya. He may have grown up in a non-violent Mennonite community in rural Wisconsin, but he's going to protect his. But then you have things like driver's licenses, trying to get your name changed, different administrations with different rules, like the current administration trying to make it that, you can't get your correct gender marker on your passport, which has now, been overturned by appeals courts and all that because it is discriminatory. My license and everything says I'm female, so my passport better well say female. If they tried sending me a male one, somebody got some splaining to do. You have, different people's morals and all that. You can't apply them to everybody. You can't say, well, this is a Christian nation, We have free exercise of religion. We have free exercise of belief. Things like that. But the main thing is you gotta respect each other. You may not understand it, but you still gotta respect them. Most recent one, school shootings and mass shootings. Everybody's quick to jump on trans this. It was a trans shooter. Well, guess what? In the history of mass shootings, there have been 5 transgender people who committed those crimes. How many were not transgender? Made you think. Guess how many are pedophiles? Things like that. Not as many as you think. The majority of pedophiles are white, male, middle-aged, Christian. Yeah. There's not indoctrination. Children are not getting chopped up to be the opposite gender. According to the WPAS standards, and I encourage you to look up actually what it means to transition. The WPAS standards, you have to be 18 in order to receive gender reassignment surgery. 18. You have to be a legal adult. Some states it's 19, like Alabama, because you're not a legal adult in Alabama until you're 19. So do some research. The most that a minor would be able to have is puberty blockers. They can also have some hormones, like testosterone or estrogen. But you know what? You know the majority of children receiving gender-affirming care are cisgender, but they've gone through puberty too early, so they need a puberty blocker to slow down the process, or they haven't gone through puberty at all, so they actually need the hormones to kick their body into place to make that process happen. You know, the majority of minors getting surgical procedures, they're for things like gynecomastia in boys, breast tissue to have that removed. So they're having gender-affirming care. There are some females who haven't developed breasts who are getting implants so that they can look better and take care of their gender dysphoria or body dysphoria because they're not developing breasts. That's the majority of the surgical procedures. Or if you had an intersex child who was born with ambiguous genitalia, so they're actually correcting the genitalia. My great-nephew was one of those. He was born split below. They had to do genetic testing to figure out what he was when he was born because his insides were outside. So he's getting gender-affirming care to be put back together, to have his scrotum as a scrotum and not labia, to have his penis as a penis and not a clitoris, and to have his bottom half sewn together, to have an anus. That's gender-affirming care. Do some research. Then you always have people who commit hate crimes just because you're who you are. When I was in boy mode, that's what I call, pre-transition was boy mode. I was sexually assaulted by a man who wanted to teach this faggot a lesson. Yeah. Held for 3 days. Assaulted repeatedly by him and 2 friends. And I was the first successful prosecution of a John Doe rape case in Illinois. My rapist, the one who instigated it all, pretended to be a gay man for 4 years in a support group. He was a predator. He is still in prison. His 2 friends, one of them, I finally said, hey, go ahead, let him out. He's served 20-something years now. The other one is getting paroled next year. Or up for parole next year. Or no, actually released next year. He's been denied parole until he fulfilled his term. So he gets out next year. My rapist will be in his 70s when he's out. But yes, bad things happen. There are fears that we have to face every day. There are processes to being who you are authentically, to live your life, to live your truth. And through education, we can cure ignorance. Open your mind, talk to people. That's the best thing that you can do. And I thank you for letting me speak to you today.